This week, I want to talk about return on investment, and not just about how to calculate it, but what does it actually mean, and how should you interpret the information that's given to you? On a recent video, I had a comment from Craig who asked about return on investment across different strategies, different deals. As your portfolio grows, what do you really need to consider when you're looking at the return on investment? Well, for me, the first thing you need to learn about return on investment is what is actually included within it. Does it account for legitimately everything? Because if it doesn't account for everything, then the figure itself is not really that relevant to you. It needs to be a net figure that considers what goes into your bank account and also what goes out of your bank account. On top of that, you can include things like market conditions and inflation if the money's left in the bank, or capital growth if you want to include things like that. But ultimately, it still needs to be net and it still needs to be relevant to you. Once you have an idea of what the return on investment is going to be on your deal, you need to decide whether or not that deal is right for you. And it's not just a case of risk versus reward. It's actually, is the reward in itself high enough to warrant doing the deal? Let's take buy, refurb, refinance as a prime example. Let's assume you're calculating the return on investment using the net cash flow figure you get every single month from your rent and the total amount of money that you left in the deal after you refinanced. Me personally, I look for a bare minimum of 50% ROI. And the reason I do this is kind of twofold. Number one, if I wanted to make 20-25% ROI, I wouldn't go through the process of refurbing a house and then refinancing it, taking twice as long to get to rental and inherently with a huge amount more risk, because you never really know what's going to happen when you start refurbing a house or if your valuation is going to come back where you want it to. Ultimately, I don't want to take on all that extra risk to make the same profit as I could if I just bought something that was designed to be a rental property from day one, that was in good condition. I wasn't relying on a heavy revaluation or anything like that, just buying a house, sticking a tenant in. I can make 20-25% doing that anyway. So for me, I'm not going to want to go through all the extra hassle and risk of trying to make 20-25% after a refinance when I can just do that on day one with less risk. The second reason I look for around 50% is, usually speaking, on these types of houses, you're going to be making around about 200, 250, maybe £300 a month cash flow, which means you're leaving around about 5 or 6 grand in per house. Now, 5 to 6K per house is really, really good. And quite frankly, I don't really want to be spending more than that on a buy, refurb, refinance. I don't leave 20, 30, 40, 50 grand in for £200-300 a month. It doesn't make sense. So for me, I'm looking to leave about 5 grand in each house. I'm looking to make around about 50% ROI. Now, that is my personal preference. Some people are very, very happy making 20-25% return on investment from a buy, refurb, refinance, and they might take 15% on an HMO. It depends on who you are as an investor and the kinds of deals that are available to you as to what kind of return on investment you're going to make. The second thing that you need to consider is how much money are you going to be investing? If you have 50 grand, then you're going to want to get absolutely everything that you can out of that 50K. You're going to get the maximum return on investment possible. If you have 100 million, investing at 50, 60, 100% ROI is incredibly challenging. Not to mention there's fees associated with moving that kind of money, which is immediately going to take a dent on your ROI. Fundamentally, it is hard to get in and out of enough deals quickly enough to invest that kind of size pot in something like a buy, refurb, refinance strategy. You need to be looking more at developments and other larger scale deals. As the deal gets bigger and more complex, there are more people that have to get paid and your margin begins to shrink. Most businesses make somewhere between 10 and 30% profit margin on regular trading activity. Most developments make between 20 and 30% margin on their deals. Now, through creative financing, you can increase that ROI as a net figure for yourself way above the 20-30% mark. However, you're still looking at making 20 to 30% margin on those deals. Most deals, as a rule of thumb, especially as your size of capital increases, are going to make around about 20%. And that's fine. 20% is great. And if you've got loads of money to play with, 20% is awesome. But it also raises the second question of, what do you do with the money that isn't being invested? And I've raised this before regarding buy, refurb, or refinance. And that is, if you need 100K to do a deal and you leave 5 grand in that deal, you have only invested £5,000. It would be fair to assume that the 95,000 that you didn't invest has actually lost value at whatever inflation is. Let's call it 2% for the moment. And if you're going to get 2% reduction on the 95K because of inflation, it took you a year to do the deal, then that loss you need to factor into your ROI figure if you're doing a deal. Because when you're looking at doing buy, refurb, refinance, yes, you can build up properties, you can build up a portfolio, that's fantastic. But the reason you do buy, refurb, refinance isn't for the insanely high ROI, or so you can invest large sums of cash, or even for cash flow. You do it because it allows you to amass a portfolio of multiple properties and increase your cash flow without needing huge sums of money to do it in the first place. That's why it's loved so much. Buy, refurb, refinance is a fantastic strategy. But when you're looking at the return on investment, per deal, you do need to factor in your entire portfolio as a whole. Something that Craig was asking about as well was, what if you've got a perfect deal? Should you wait 12 months to get into the perfect deal, waiting for that perfect buy, refurb, refinance that comes around so that you can get all of your money back out? Or say times like right now where the market is really, really tough, should you go into a deal that makes a slightly lower ROI so you can do a deal now when otherwise you couldn't? Well, the simple answer is this. How long do you think you're going to need to wait before you get that perfect deal? Because ultimately, if you've got to wait 2, 3, 4, 5 years to get that deal, then you clearly need to be doing deals now. And one thing I would always look to do is have a minimum that you will take on any given day. What is the lowest ROI or the lowest cash in figure, however you want to structure it for yourself, for a buy, refurb, refinance type situation that you're happy to take on? If you're happy to leave in no more than £8,000 in a deal and a deal comes round that leaves in less than £8,000, I would say take it. Fundamentally, you need to be doing as many deals as humanly possible if you're doing the buy, refurb, refinance strategy, because it takes so long to amass a decent sized portfolio and to generate some decent cash flow that you can actually live off or spend in a way that's going to be useful to you. If you're doing something like HMOs, then I would wait and I would look for the more perfect HMO deals that make 22, 25, maybe even 30% ROI. Why? Because they're inherently easier to find, there's less demand for them in the market, and they generate larger sums of cash flow. The profit is bigger. Yes, you leave money in, but the profit is bigger. Therefore, getting the perfect one makes more sense. But if you're doing a buy, refurb, refinance where the profit's actually pretty small, then ultimately I would be doing as many deals as I possibly can with a maximum that I'm allowed myself to leave in the deal, or a minimum ROI, however you want to calculate it for yourself. So you need to consider how long it's going to take you. In a market right now, it can take well over a year before you're going to find a deal that's going to be absolutely perfect, if it's even possible. So right now, a prime example is I have 2 buy, refurb, refinance deals going on. One is pulling out just over 2 grand, so it's a perfect deal, and the other one is leaving about 6 grand in. So across the two, I'm leaving 4 grand in per house. Now that makes me very happy, because 4 grand is well below the figure that I wanted to leave in, which was 5K. So I'm happy with that. So what I've done is I've done 2 deals at once, which across the 2 average out where I want them to be. If you're able to do multiple deals, then you really need to consider that as well, and especially across your entire portfolio and how your ROI affects that. If you're doing multiple deals, if you can do multiple deals, average out the ROI across all of them, the same way you would with leverage. It's a different topic for a different time. If you've got 10 houses and some of them are at 90% loan to value and some at 60% loan to value, you don't necessarily have to reduce the loan to value in one and increase it on another, because your portfolio as a whole is, say, 70, 80% loan to value, which is below the threshold that you're happy with. Take it as an average across the portfolio, not necessarily on an individual deal by deal basis. When you look at each deal, of course they have to stack in their own right, and due diligence has to be solid, and so on and so forth. But if you're able to do multiple deals, average out your ROI across them all. It's really going to help you get a clearer picture of how your money is being invested. And if you're waiting, you've got to consider the cost of waiting, and not just your own impatience about not getting paid, but the actual cost of waiting, which at the moment is somewhere between 2 and 3% for inflation of the money that you have that isn't being invested. And that includes money that is in deals that isn't going to make you profit because it's going to return to you at the end, probably from a refinance or even from a sale, something like that. The money that is tied up is a cost if it is not making you profit. In a buy, refurb, refinance, the money that doesn't get left in is not an investment, it's a liability because it's not making you any more money. So on your 95K that you left in the bank, it's actually costing you £1,900. So if you leave even 4 grand in a deal and you got 1,900 quid's worth, you're actually coming in at nearly 6 grand left in that deal in terms of practical application of return on investment. This is a thing. ROI can get as complicated as you want it to be, and you can include as many factors as you want. Typically speaking, people don't include how much money is left in the bank at the end of it, and so on and so forth. However, for myself, when I'm looking at investing my money, it is definitely something I'm considering. I don't want money in the bank, I want it in property. So if you're looking to do something like a buy refurb or a flip or something along those lines, and right now you can't get hold of a deal, what do you do? Because every day, as you know, your money is shrinking in the bank. Well, the crux of it would be either reduce what you think is your minimum that you would take, or look at different strategies. Ultimately, buy, refurb, refinance is one of many different strategies, and it has its pros, but it also has its cons. Generating lumps of cash from flips, fantastic. You can do that doing joint ventures and lending money out. A lot of people will give you 12, 20% per annum, somewhere in that region, just for lending the money out with basically zero risk. So it's lower risk than a buy, refurb, refinance. Yes, your profit's lower, but it also generates a lump of cash for you. If you're looking for cash flow, then why don't you look at doing something like an HMO? That money that you're gonna use to do a buy and refinance, you could use that to do an HMO, and you make better cash flow, which actually increases your passive income side, which has an awful lot of benefits for you. It de-risks your future investments. It means that you've got more money coming in. And if you're making around about £1,000 a month for an HMO, by the end of the year, you're up 12 grand. So yeah, sure, you could have done a buy and refinance, got your money back, maybe it's 50, 60 grand or something like that. You've only got 12 grand back from rental proceeds, sure, but that's profit. And your 50, 60K is still equity within another property. You still increase the size of your portfolio. And most people who are looking at doing buy, refinance, and other strategies like this tend to have a decent job of some sort. That's how they got their pot together in the first place. Most people are saving money on a monthly basis to put towards investing in property. On top of that, you can raise finance. A lot of investors are beginning to do this now that they've used their 50, 100, 200K pot or whatever they started out with. They've now run out of that because they've built a portfolio, but they want to keep doing it. So now they are looking to raise finance. In this period where you can't get access to deals, begin to reduce the ROI that you would take, but not below a certain point that makes you uncomfortable. Maybe look at changing up the strategy and look to learn and to raise finance. Your capital pot is bigger, so when the market changes, you can take better advantage of the opportunities that are coming your way. So when you're looking at return on investment, you can't just nail it down onto an individual deal and decide that, okay, it's making 20%, I'm happy. You've got to consider the individual strategy that's taking place. You've got to consider your return investment across the multiple deals that you're doing at one time. And you've got to consider the return investment of the actual cash that you have that is being invested on a year-by-year basis. So the things you need to consider are, do I need to reduce my return investment goal for each individual deal? Have I considered my return investment across multiple deals? And have I considered a different strategy that would help me to invest my money now when I can't use a strategy that I want to be doing? Because ultimately, the thing that I focus on above all else, above my return investment, above how much money I'm leaving in a deal, above the cash flow, is how many deals am I doing? Period. If you keep doing more deals, you keep making profit on every single deal, you continue to keep making more money. It's surprising how that works. Focus on doing as many deals as possible. A couple of weeks ago, someone asked me in a Q&A session, if you were starting out, would you do anything differently again? And my response was yes. I would be doing more and more and more and more joint ventures. The more deals that I can do, the bigger my portfolio can grow, the bigger my business can grow, the more revenue that is coming through the door. It doesn't really matter about the costs and the profit margin. What matters is increased revenue. They say that money flows through and you hold it with your open hands. So money can come through, but it can also keep coming to you. And that's the thing. If you keep increasing your revenue, then the piece that you take for yourself every time can begin to grow, and that's how you can increase your earnings. So for me, it's just about doing as many deals as is humanly possible at once. And as long as each one in itself is profitable, I'm happy. If you've enjoyed this video, then please give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, then that button works just fine as well. Please subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this. And if you're considering what other strategies that you might be able to invest in, then why don't you click the link in the description. It takes you through to our mailing list, and every single week we send out the best property investment deals here in the UK, fully vetted, fully stacked, ready for you. Until next time, take care.